Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. We are John and Wendy Williams from the Short-Term Rental Authority, your authority on all things short-term rental related to help make you the best operator ever. And today's podcast, we have massive value for you today. We are going to be talking about how to get not just one short-term rental, but as many short-term rentals as you want without creating more work for yourself.
Without working harder. That's the key, right?
Without working harder. I like it.
Yes.
I like it.
Because that tends to be what happens is you get one and then you get two and it's twice as much work, and you get three and it's trice as much work. Is trice a word? I think it is. Once, trice. I don't know. Anyway.
Thrice.
But the idea is that you don't want that to be linear, because at some point you get burnt out on it and then you just can't scale anymore.
Oh, the burnout is real.
Or more often what happens is you're like, I'm done with this.
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore. Yeah. So that's what happens.
Sell it all. Good.
Yeah.
And you can sell it to us. So here we are going to cover four main components of this concept. First of all, we're going to talk about the foundation that you're going to need, because we liken it to building a house, sort of. That's the analogy. John likes analogies. So we're going to be talking about the foundations of your business first. And then we're going to be talking about marketing. And then we're going to be talking about acquisitions, how to find it. And then lastly, we will be talking about cash flow management, how to fund it. So let's start at the beginning with the foundations of it. Now, the foundations are the basics, right? If you're thinking about building a house, you have to build a good foundation on which to build the walls and the roof, right? You don't build the roof first. You have to build the concrete slab first, right? So let's talk about what that means. And there's a couple of components with the foundation that we thought were most important, and they are automation, documentation, team members, the tools that you're going to need, and bookkeeping and accounting. Very, very important. So let's talk about automation first.
Yeah, so automation is probably one of the first things you're going to do in your business. It's the one thing that you can do right up front. And a lot of these things we're talking about are truly, they're all foundation in a sense, meaning when you build a skyscraper, you need a deeper foundation. So the more you intend on having, the more solid these things need to be. But yeah, automation is one of the very first things you can do. And it's one of the first things that we did. You can automate a good portion of your messages. You can automate a good portion of your pricing, as far as that goes, dynamic pricing. And you can even automate your cleaners to an extent, meaning they're not robots, but at least they get scheduled automatically. And there's a tool for that and all those kind of things. So that's, when you're thinking about the operations part of the short-term rental business, that's where all the activity is. And as much of that as you can automate, especially in the beginning, it's less that you have to do, for one. And two, it then offloads those tasks that truly need to be done by a human to the human. Right. So automation is a big piece of it, big piece of it.
Right. And I like the automation aspect of the things that are repetitive, right? There's 7 messages that go out to the guest, and that's not including if they ask you a question, right?
Right. That's just a standard reservation.
Just a standard reservation, right? So automating those repetitive tasks, and we automate anything that can be automated. We like to automate because it frees us up for doing things that bring in money.
Right. And while computers can make mistakes, they're not as error prone as humans. So they don't forget to send the message,
right?
Or they don't see the message come in and then they're sleeping.
Right.
The computer's always awake.
Yeah.
So even in the middle of the night when it's 1 a.m. and you don't have 24/7 coverage yet and you're asleep, your customer's still getting a response.
Right.
Right. And that's super important.
Sure. Yeah. When they're in the checkout line.
Especially on the messaging side of it. That's a lot of the business.
A lot of it. So the next aspect is documentation. And here we're mostly talking about SOPs. And SOP stands for Standard Operating Procedures. It's how you do the things in your business. And when you're first getting started, and I wish that somebody had told us this, document everything. Whatever you are doing, write it down. And we'll talk about some tools that you can use when you are documenting those systems and those processes, but it doesn't matter. Write it down. However you are doing it, write it down, because it's going to be fluid anyway. Things are always changing, I feel like. We are always updating our SOPs because we learn different things in our business, and we have to adapt and change in certain ways. So, but it's really great to have something to start with, right? Especially if you are going to be turning it over to somebody else to do eventually, then they have to know how to do what you're asking them to do.
Yeah. And I want to say that's the easiest part to skip, because it doesn't feel like your customer's asking for it. So it's not like messaging you can't skip. You have to answer the customer. But documentation, you can kind of let slide, and you'll say, well, I'll do it later. I'll document it later. So,
and later never comes.
Yeah. So quick tip, you were going to give a tool and tip. Quick tip, when you're doing something, get yourself a screen recorder.
That's a really great tip.
There are free ones. There's Loom is a popular one. Vimeo has one. There's I think we've mentioned this before. But screen record yourself doing the things, even if it's something small, and make it easy for you to do so that all you have to do really is click a button and then go do what you're going to do, and then click stop, and you've got your video. At least it's videoed. And now you can take that later and have it written out, which it should be at some point. Very detailed, extremely detailed, so the 6-year-old can do it. But at least now you started the process of documentation. So that's one of those things you can do right in the beginning too. When you're building that first listing on Airbnb, document it, record it, so that you can then later pass that along to someone else. And then over time, you'll refine, okay, this is really how I want that done, right? You alluded to that as well.
Right.
But that documentation and those SOPs become the procedures that then lead to the next thing in the foundation, which is
turning it over to somebody else.
Yeah, your team members.
Yes, right. So it's not necessarily that you are going to be documenting all these things. You will in the beginning, but after a while, you're going to be bringing on some people to help you. And that's one thing that they can do. If you record how you want things done, then all you have to do is give that video to your team member that you have hired, and say, I want you to write an SOP for this. Document this procedure so that anybody can follow that procedure. So having that first step done makes it so much easier when you have to give it away, right?
Yeah, and if you get in the habit of doing that, it becomes a habit, right? It just happens. And eventually you want to make that the culture of your company, so that you're not the only person producing these videos. So a lot of times, we have this thing in our business where if something comes up that's going to come up again, which most things do, assuming it's not a one-off thing, then whoever does that job, it's their responsibility to then document it.
Right.
And so these SOPs grow over time. And in the beginning, you may need to seed it and set the example, but later on, you're not actually even the one creating the videos.
Right.
Right. You're the one has just set you have an SOP for how to create SOPs.
Yes.
Actually,
we have an SOP on how to create an SOP.
Yes.
Yes. that detailed, but that is in essence what your business is how you do your business.
Yeah,
And
it's the procedures.
all has to be documented somewhere. And so we talked about team members. So let's talk about some tools that you're going to need to do your job. So for example, you need somewhere to collect all of those SOPs, some program to compile all those SOPs into, so you just have one place that your SOPs live.
Yeah, and you want them electronic. You want them in the cloud somewhere.
They don't need to be handwritten on your desk.
Yeah, it's better than not having it, but a lot of the team members that we talk about tend to be virtual.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And hardly anybody, well, we don't have an office, so nobody comes into the office.
Right. Right.
So you want these virtual. We started out using Trello. It's a place to start. Notion is another one of those. Notion.io I like a lot.
You like Asana?
Asana is for project management. It's
Okay.
not for documentation.
Gotcha.
So you wouldn't use that for your documentation. So that's one thing, is use the right tool for the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Asana would be an example of a tool you would use to schedule tasks for your team members to do.
Mm-hmm.
So one of those tasks might be go create this SOP, but then the SOP lives in, a Google Drive or something,
or
somewhere online.
Trello or someplace like that. Yeah. So having a place to house your SOPs is a great place to start. You have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. And then you need a way to communicate.
Right. With your team members, right? And
So you want to get part of that not working as hard as getting the stuff off your phone.
Yeah. Oh, man,
right.
That is huge.
So text messaging, you don't want to be text messaging cleaners and have that be the procedure. You want a centralized communication that everyone has access to. Slack is a really good tool for that.
Yep.
So central communications, and then occasionally you need to make phone calls. Still get that off your phone. Use a voice over IP type service. We use Dialpad. There are others, Ring Central. There's all sorts of solutions for, but basically now you've got a business that has a phone number and an internal phone system, and you have your internal communication system with Slack, and you have your place to put your SOPs with Trello, and your documentation or maybe Notion or wherever all those things are, your employee handbook, all of those kind of things. These are tools that your team needs to do their job.
Yep.
Right.
Right. And then the other thing about in the foundation section is, and this is just basic, laying the foundation so that you can, build onto it later, is somebody has to do the books. And hopefully, even if you know how to do the books, getting that off your plate is so critical. I cannot tell you what a great feeling it is to not have to do the books anymore.
Yeah, and it's not only not having to do them, but it's, do you have good numbers? Because your accounting and your bookkeeping.
When I was doing it, we did not have good numbers.
Yeah, because you'd wait like 3 months to catch it up.
Right.
And in this business, you need.
It's terrible.
Our bookkeeper now, it's reconciled weekly and monthly.
All right.
So each week we know where we stand, what expenses are out there, what's coming in, income wise, are we meeting our numbers, those types of things, because it's from that knowledge that then you can make business decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need somebody basically that turns data, which is what the books are, data, into information, which are reports that you can run and say, what's my profit and loss? What's, what do we have as far as inventory goes? What's on our balance sheet? It's those types of things. And that's foundational for any business, really.
Yeah.
But accounting and bookkeeping in this business is not simple. It is not. And so you need somebody that understands.
It's complex.
How to turn that data into information. Just a quick example, you may get a $3,000 payout from Airbnb that hits your bank account, but in that $3,000 are 4 different reservations, 4 different cleaning fees, whatever other numerous fees are in there, right? And somebody has to break that all out and categorize it so that you know where the money went and where it's coming to.
Yeah.
Right. So it's work. It's work.
It sure. I want to say the bookkeeper was our first hire.
Yeah.
I want to say
Yeah.
that's the first
One of the
person
first people we brought on.
we brought
Yeah,
on. Yeah. Yeah. So,
for sure.
oh boy, it is just so crucial so that you can make those really good business decisions. And I cannot, I can't even. It makes me have heart palpitations just thinking about having to do those books again.
Yeah, right.
It is just not.
Yeah, me too. 'Cause
It's
you were horrible at it.
not. I was.
I mean, no offense, but
No.
it's not like I was doing it. I can't complain.
Right.
But yeah.
That's true. You can't complain. You weren't doing it. So the next thing, now that you have a really great foundation, you've got all those things taken care of. Now we can start building the walls, so to speak, right? If you were using the building the house analogy, now we can start building the walls. And one wall that's going to be important is going to be, how are you going to be doing your marketing? What OTAs are you going to be using? And OTA stands for online travel agencies. And we use OTAs like Airbnb, Vrbo,
Booking.com. There's many out there now that you know what they are.
40 plus, right? So,
yeah.
So
more than that, actually.
And you may not start off having your own direct booking website, but that's definitely a goal, right? Is to get those direct bookings because they are very profitable. But anything else you want to say about marketing?
Other than the platforms are doing the marketing for you in a big sense. So that is that's why you tend to see people lean on them early on, especially because that's a whole thing, like getting yourself in front of customers, running ads. Do people know you exist even? And so being there is what they're actually doing for you. Now they're taking a piece of it, a percentage to do it. So you got to consider that. But it's even on the platforms, there are ways to market. It's what pictures do you have? It's what your title is in there. What does your description look like? Right. Yeah. So even when you have a listing on an OTA, yes, they are advertising you in a pool, but how do you stand out of that pool? And so now that you've gotten this other stuff out of the way, you've got your documentation and your automation, and your team members, and your bookkeeping is being done and all those kind of things. Now you can start focusing on things like marketing. And then eventually when you have repeat guests, now we can take them direct.
Yep.
And save them money and make more money and start building up that. So it's kind of, see how it's kind of freeing you to actually do the things.
Oh, working on your business, not in your business.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So the next thing is acquisitions. And this is how to find business.
Right. Because we said one is how many as you want.
Right. Right.
So how are you going to get the next one?
How are you going to get the next one? Right. So now you can start focusing on, okay, well, I've got this one. How did I find this one? And you've documented how you found it. Now you can go out and maybe refine that process a little bit. Now we can start talking about all sorts of acquisition strategies, right? Are you going to be doing the rental arbitrage model? Are you going to be purchasing the property? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. And how are you going to, fund it is part of it.
That's the next thing.
Because that's what you got to start thinking about is, okay, if 100 sounds great, but what are my capital requirements for that? And like you said, part of that comes into strategy. It's much lower barrier entry for your rental arbitrage if you're going to be buying it. Now you've got the real estate component as well. And so you start, kind of planning out, okay, what is our strategy? How many per month? What does that look? Is it the business is going to be self-funding this? Because after a while it does, it becomes kind of a snowball to where, you get 10, 12 of these, all of a sudden you start picking them up quicker because the cash flow from the business is actually generating that. Or it could be generating your down payments as well, right?
Yes, for sure.
So that's, but it's something you want to start thinking about and have an active pipeline of acquisitions, not only customer side, because if you're doing a good job in the previous step in marketing, all of a sudden you're going to have this inventory problem where there's way more demand for your product than you have.
Yep.
And so the next step is let's acquire more of them.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what we're talking about in the acquisitions process.
Right. And then in the cash flow management part is, how do you fund it? How are you going to go from one to how are you going to get the next one, right? So now that you know how much it costs you to get that one, now you have a baseline almost of what it's going to cost you to get the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And we use a cash flow management called Profit First.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a book by Michael Michalowicz called Profit First.
I think it's McAllowitz.
Michalowicz.
But even he says nobody can pronounce my name. So I believe his website, if you go to Mike Motorbike, it will actually go to his right website.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So whatever his last name is, it's a really great book, but it's called Profit First. And it's kind of like the envelope system for your business. So every dollar has a purpose, right? And you almost spend it on paper first, right? So it's okay, well, this much money is coming in. So now I can allocate it to all these different things, and we have different accounts that we send that money to, right, in certain times of the month. But we could do a whole podcast on that.
Yeah, and one of those is acquisitions, but that's what happens. So you've built the foundation again, right? You've got your team, you've got the machine, you've started your marketing. Now you've got acquisitions coming in, you're generating more properties. Inevitably, now you have more cash, and managing that cash flow is what you're talking about. And that's a big piece in and of itself, just to make sure that, well, during high season, when you're hand over fist in it, that when you get to low season, you have some to get through the low season.
Right.
Right. And then you need to divide that up and say, okay, what part of that is going to pay, your owner? What part of that is going to, for acquisitions, perhaps? What part of that is going to, just operations in general? And then what part of that is maybe in reserve? And then we got to set aside some for taxes. There's always taxes.
Always taxes.
Although in the beginning, kind of avoid that, but that's another podcast episode. But it's that cash flow management then becomes something that really requires your attention.
Right.
And it's a good thing that you're not stuck messaging guests
I was just about
and
to say that.
doing your own bookkeeping and worried about marketing and all these other things, because now cash flow management becomes the thing that can get overlooked if you haven't set those other things in place.
Right, because
and it's a huge piece.
Now you're working on your business, not in your business. And now that you're not doing all those foundational things, now you have time, and your time is freed up to work on those important things of getting more units. Right. So, well, we hope that you have found some value in this. Now, if you want to know exactly how to do all of these things, we can help you. And here's what you do. You're going to text STRA, that's STRA, to this phone number, 980-888-8541. Again, text STRA to 980-888-8541. And what we're going to do is we're going to send you an ebook. It's the 3 things that you need to know when you're first getting started in short-term rentals, but it'll get you in the system, and we can help you out, and we can teach you how to do all of these things and even more to help make you the best operator ever. On to the next.